Today's a really big day in Hannah's life.
It's the day that I finish my quilt top.
Keep watching. Wow, you have been so busy. I love all of your blocks.
Thank you.
And if you're joining us for the first time, we just want to do a real quick recap. This is a 3-part series, and if you haven't caught the first ones, you might want to look for those two. We have, the first one was really concentrating on how to cut your fabric. The second one was
we started sewing, how to do your strip assemblies, how to make your blocks.
You feeling pretty comfortable about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with my blocks.
Awesome.
The corners are meeting up pretty nicely, so
that's great.
It's better than I expected.
Now, one of the things we're doing in this particular show is we are showing you some of the little tricks and tips that you need to know that might not be mentioned in the patterns. For instance, very few quilt patterns are going to give you the specifics that you do every single time. We're not going to tell you to press 50 times during making a quilt. And we don't necessarily mention the squaring up blocks because that is a common thing that quilters learn to do. If you don't have a really square block, then your quilt doesn't go together quite like it needs to.
Gotcha.
So you've got all of your strip assemblies done, you've got all your piecing done, and we're ready to square up the blocks.
All right.
Okay. Now, when we square up a block, I'm going to be using this particular ruler, and I'm going to put a white underneath it so that you don't have the conflicting lines. So one of the things that we want to point out in this square is that it is a 12.5-inch square, and it is designed to help you square up your quilt. So we're making a 10.5-inch block that will finish at 10 inches because you have a 1/4-inch seam allowance on each side when you do your block. Now they have these cool little corners here that actually put your 1/4-inch on the pieced block. So we're going to show that in just a minute.
Okay.
But when you're doing the 10.5-inch, we're going to go to the 1/2-inch mark. So if you'll look at this, this is the 1-inch mark. This is your 1/2-inch mark on every one of those.
I like that they have the dotted line. I feel like that's very helpful in differentiating between your full marks and your halves.
Absolutely. And another thing is, I think when I first started using a ruler, they didn't even have those. They just had the little marks.
Oh, no.
And so quilting has come a long, long way in just the few years I've been quilting. We won't talk about that. Okay, so let's get started with the squaring, and we're going to start with your 10.5-inch block first. Now, I recommend that you use your lines on your board to basically get your piece on the table straight. So I use it that way. I'm not going to actually trim with these lines, but we're using them to make sure it's straight. We'll be using our ruler on that. Now we're going to find that 10.5-inch mark, and we're going to want this to go from corner to corner on this square, and we want it to be at 10.5. So we find it just like this. So here is that 10.5-inch corner with the dotted line, and we're going to have that tucked right into that corner. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do we need to have this dotted line on the bottom to make it 10.5 all the way around?
Yes, we do. That was very good, Hannah. I would like to say that was a test, but I would have caught that in just a minute. But for right now, you are absolutely right. We want the dotted line on the bottom and the bottom, the dotted line on the side. And that's going to line it up with the top up here. You still want to make sure this is going corner to corner because that tells you that it's also square.
Gotcha.
And then you use your rotary cutter just to trim off anything that happens to be hanging out over on the side. And I just see a teeny bit.
Okay.
That probably wouldn't make a huge difference, but go ahead and do the little cut there.
Okay.
All right. So now I would say that was a pretty good cut.
Thank you.
To have that little to come off of the side.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so that's how you do your solid blocks. So I'm going to leave this one for you. Or do we want to do this one too? Check this one out?
Sure, we can check this one out.
Let's check
See
that
if
one
I've
out.
learned.
Okay, let's get this one square on the line.
Yeah. Okay. Square on the line. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. I've realized something as have been doing this. I have a really hard time talking and doing at the same time.
And that is the natural, that's just what human beings do. A lot of us think we are able to multitask, but really our brain is designed to do one thing after another. It just does it really fast. So if you don't want to talk while you're doing it, I think that's okay. And if I run my mouth while you're trying to concentrate, that would distract you as well. So I'll just watch, and everybody else is watching. Just think of all those people out there watching, and keep calm.
So Donna, on this one,
yes,
it's lined up pretty good here and on the corners. I am just the teeniest bit short. Is that going to hurt me?
It's not, because I'm going to show you a couple more tricks when we pin it together.
Okay.
I would say that's like maybe, I don't even think it's a 1/16 of an inch. Yeah, it's probably right at a 1/16. It's not even an 1/8 of an inch. So whenever you put your squares together, I always tell, I tell anytime anybody I show to quilt, don't be overly perfectionistic, especially when you first start, because your cutting is going to get more accurate as you go along. Your pressing is going to be better. The whole works. But when you first start off, I can show you a couple of little tricks when we start sewing that will help you to fudge a little bit, because a little bit of fudge is good for you.
Yeah, exactly. Doctor prescribed, right?
That's right.
Okay.
But otherwise, that one is almost perfect, except for that teeny bit, like about a 1/16 of an inch. It's not even an 1/8 of an inch, and we can fudge that much.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, now we're going to square up your pieced block, and we're going to use the same ruler, and I'm going to use a little different mark. So let's put this up here so we can see that mark. You see how there's a little corner right here that's accentuated, and it goes all the way down through here. We want a finished 5-inch block, so we're going to use that, and we're going to use this little corner to.
You want to finish 10 and a half inch block?
I want to finish 10 and a half, but we're going to be measuring it with your strip piece. And so I'll show you. So if you had 5 1/4 and 5 1/4, you'd have 10 and a half. Okay?
Oh, okay, I see.
So
I have trouble with the math part. That's why Donna comes in and helps me out a lot.
Okay, so we're going to take this pieced block, and see these were 5 1/2 inch strips, and when we sewed those together, we ended up with the 10 1/2 inch block.
Okay.
But we're going to put that little corner right here, and it's good that you ask these questions, because sometimes I get going fast, and somebody needs to know that question is important. Okay, so we're putting that little corner right on that little corner. See how that worked?
Yeah,
and
right
so
where
then,
the seams meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're mainly focusing on this little square.
Okay.
That quarter part of this whole block. So we put this little line here that I pointed out, and then you follow that up to here, and you follow it over to here, and you can see that you've got the 1/4 inch is on there. So this is actually adding your 1/4 inch, so when you sew it together, the 1/4 inch goes away.
Okay.
Then you would trim it. But see, I'm looking at this, and I see very little, if anything, maybe a few little strings. Do you see anything up there?
There's a touch. There's a tiny bit over here.
Okay. Can you cut it from there? I'll let you put your hand on there. If not, we'll move it back. We can move it back for you. Okay, so it's just ever so slightly, and it probably could have fudged a little bit too.
Okay.
You did an amazing job on that.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to trim up all of the blocks, but I'm going to show you how to do the layout of the quilt. So let's start, go back over to our pattern, and we have a great picture here. And here in step 2, we say quilt assembly, referring to quilt assembly diagram, voila.
Aha.
Remember, I told you in the very first video, if it has a bold it means that it's drawing your attention to that, and that we probably have a diagram over here for you to look at. Or we're naming a piece, like for instance, here's Unit A, Unit A. So we want you to see that. So over here, we had Unit A written. Now down here, you have Block B assembly. So you're going to refer to quilt assembly diagram, alternating your blocks A and B as shown, and assemble 5 rows of 4 blocks. So we have 2 blocks here of your pieced blocks. Here is your solid color blocks.
Okay.
So you've got 2 of each of those, and I want you to just lay it out the same way that you see in the picture.
Okay.
Okay, now it seems like that one of your stripes is going a different direction. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, so always kind of stand back and look at it. If you have a felt wall, you can put it up on the felt wall. But your stripes were going sideways over here and up and down over there. Now, the good thing is...
and you got these kitties too, so I'm lucky I put those the right direction.
That's right. Now, you can look at your picture and see that you have 3 of those. And so you could sit down and make 3 of these, but you can't just make 3 of those or 5 of those and turn one, and we'll show you why. If you were to go and...
We do have more pieces over there, Donna, if you would like to pull those.
Oh, okay. So why don't you follow the picture here?
Okay.
And the reason we're doing this is because you don't want your kitties to be upside down. So where this row starts with your kitties, then this one is, the second row is going to start with your pieced block. Oh, this is looking so cute.
Yeah. Okay, stripes going the right way. Kitties are all facing up.
Very good. I'm really liking this.
Yeah, it's so bright and cheerful.
It is. Okay, now I recommend that you go ahead and pin your blocks together.
Okay.
And a super easy way to do it is just to know you're going to be sewing here, so you could fold this over and you would be able to put a pin in this so that you can go and sew that 1/4 inch seam. I usually start in the middle and then I put 1 on each end.
Okay, so you pinned right at the seam.
Yes.
And then that makes sense.
Now, remember we talked about the fudge factor earlier? Okay, I'm looking at this one, and even though these were, let's put that back over here. Okay, well this one's going pretty well, but if you ever see just a little bit of something that doesn't look right, we can fix that when we put the seams together by allowing one of them to be just a little bit shorter. Just a little bit, if that's what you need to do, but still get your 1/4 inch. It's just part of it won't be quite as wide.
Because then the part that's not as wide, that's what's in the seam, right? Like the hiding bit, so you don't even see that.
You don't even see that. So if it's just a little bit, now I wouldn't try to do a couple of inches. If you were a 1/4 of an inch, that's a little much.
Yeah.
But if you just had, like you had, that little bitty 1/16 of an inch.
Yeah, not quite a big
You
deal.
can fudge it. So you're going to pin these together.
Okay.
All
so
right.
then I can, since we pin that one that way, do you do all 3 of them, or, well,
Just
4
pin,
of them?
Just pin those 2 together.
Okay.
And then we'll sew those 2, and then you'll sew it with this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Kind of more in like bite-sized chunks. You're not trying to do a
Right.
whole row at the same time, because I feel like that would probably get cumbersome if you did like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Some people do it and you'll kind of develop a knack for yourself. But some people like to just take them and stack them, so they would have just stacked them one on top of the other. But then it still takes a little thought process when you start picking them up and putting them together.
Yeah.
But you'll develop that kind of like a 6th sense once you're quilting. But even some of the best quilters will still accidentally sew a block the wrong way if they don't just take the time to pin a couple of them together. And you can double check yourself to make sure that you've done it the right way. that you pinned on the right side, because it could have been that you accidentally picked it up and maybe put the pins over here. So you can always do this, and you can open this back up. So you sew that one, you sew this one, and then you can open it up and put these side by side, like so.
And you know they're all going the right direction.
Right. And then you can just fold this over and grab it, and voila, you pin those together.
Okay.
Okay, but I would go ahead and sew these two together first, and then do that.
All right.
So you ready to sew?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So I have my 2 side blocks for my row. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Okay, I highly recommend that you flip it over on this particular piece so that you can see your seams on the top. It's just a nice little way to keep your eye on your seam whenever you're first starting out, to make sure that they don't get bunched up on the feed dogs and things like that.
Gotcha.
All right.
Okay. That makes sense. And then I can do that handy dandy trick you showed me with the seam ripper if my seam is starting to go.
That's right. I'll put it
the wrong
right
way.
here.
Okay.
I think I have it over here on my side this time. All right.
Okay, I'm all lined up. Go put it under the needle. Put down my foot. Well, do I need to put that back a little?
Yes.
Okay.
See, you're already becoming intuitive with this. I'm going to pull this thread out a little bit more, though.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Whoops. There we go. All right.
Okay.
And away you go. Oh, very good. You remember to pull those pins out and don't sew over your pins. You remember the reason not to sew over your pins?
You can break a needle, right?
That's right. You could break a needle, or you could nick a needle. And when I say nick a needle, that means it's going to hit that pin just slightly. It might not break the pin, but it's not good for your sewing machine, and it's not good for the needle. It'll start, could put a burr in your needle, and then it won't sew right. Okay, good.
I love that trick.
That is a good trick. Your seam ripper is your best bud. In more than one way. And I see you're doing a really good job of using that left hand to help keep it straight without tugging on the fabric. That's good. All right. Now let's take a peek. Pull it forward. Yeah. Let's take a little peek at that. It kind of went off. Pull it over here so we can see it. It kind of got a little skinny there. So I'm going to ask you to go back, because look, it's all the way back here. It started when I started saying you're doing a good job there.
I got too cocky.
Let's go ahead and go back to that.
Okay.
Drop your needle into that.
Do I need to seam rip it?
And you don't have to seam rip it. I'm not going to make you do that.
Awesome. But I'm okay.
Okay. So, no, you don't have to do that. Okay.
Well, my needle was down.
Well, then you do have to do that. Okay, if you'll slide your fabric through there, it'll kind of pull it up for you.
Oh, okay.
Now you want to start almost back to the back. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Now, why we're doing this is because you actually turned just a little bit here, and it went off of the edge, so you don't have a true 1/4 inch seam all the way across.
Gotcha.
And I won't talk to you this time. Okay, is the needle going into the seam? You need it to go back into the exact seam. There,
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Otherwise, you'll have a divot in your seam. Okay, and remember, you're watching down here to keep that fabric up against your purple strip, and that's why the purple strip is so important. It'll help you not do that little curve. And I told you I wasn't going to talk, and I'm just running my mouth now.
It's okay. I'm making faces because I'm trying to get it right. I make all sorts of faces.
Very good. Okay. All right. So you saw what I meant by keeping your eye on that purple strip so that you don't have that situation. Okay?
Yeah.
Does that look good?
Yeah, I think it went up a little bit still, but it was not near as bad as it was the first time.
Okay. So at that point, if you were a perfectionistic person, you'd want to rip it out. But let me look at it and see if I think you can fudge this one too. This is going to be a whole quilt full of fudge. Yeah, I think you can.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Okay.
here's the next one.
All right. Seam up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and take that one out. Oh, hello.
Use your seam ripper to kind of pull that thread back.
Oh, okay.
So you can just take your seam ripper and pull it back like so.
Oh.
So it's a good little tool in more than one way. Okay, let's get rid of that thread that wants to sit on top. All right. And remember to watch the purple strip, because that's what's going to give you that perfect 1/4 inch.
That one's better.
That one is much better.
Much better. Okay.
Congratulations.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, next step is putting these together in a row, right?
That's right. So we'll show you how to do that.
All right.
So you have all of your blocks, or both of those blocks sewn together. We'll finish up, but we're going to do one row today to make sure that we're showing everybody how to do it. So let's press next.
Okay.
And you've got your twos sewn together like we pinned together. So
Yeah.
you want to press the seam
Okay.
that you sewed, and yep, lots of best press. I love best press because it does put so much more body into the fabric. And when you press like this, remember you're setting the seams. And to set the seams just means that it's going to be easier for them to kind of lock together. Okay, and we're going to press, yep.
Okay.
And so we're going to press that way. Remember,
Play the piano?
You're going to play the piano. Yay, she remembers.
I recommend
Oh,
not
it's
playing the
kinda
piano
hot.
so soon after you iron it. Woo!
We'll have to call you Hot Fingers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you press that, and believe it or not, that is an important step. It really does help. Okay, so now you can press that.
Okay. And you press it away from yourself, right?
Right, without putting too much weight on that iron. But I like to stop right at the seam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so put it right at the seam for just a second and let the weight of the iron, okay, and then pick it up and then flip. Let's let it cool just a little bit. La, la, la. Okay, now let's go ahead and flip it over,
Okay.
and we're going to spray it again
Oh, okay. Right on the seam?
right on the seam and press again.
Okay.
And what that does is it just really causes that seam to look, or that be really nice and flat. All of those stitches are locked together, and
Okay.
it's going to make a much easier quilt to put together
Okay.
because those seams are well pressed. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, look how neat that is.
I tell you, you should be feeling pretty proud.
I am, yeah. No, I am pretty pleased with it so far.
Oh, look at that. It's so gorgeous. All right. Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to put that one over there and do the exact same thing.
Exact same
I'll quit
thing?
trying to
Okay.
take away your best press.
Yeah, Donna. So I started to do it on the cat side again. Is that still the side I go on?
Yes, because you're going to be putting that to, yeah, because when you put your same side up, then the seams will go the same way. So these we're pressing that way. And no,
Oh.
flip it over. You want to flip this over and press on that side too.
Oh.
Okay?
Do I need to best press this side too?
Yes.
Oh.
You know, this is the best thing you can do to help your quilts be nice and flat and straight. So that's a good thing. Okay, now you'll have to flip your block back over because you want your cats to be on the same side. So when you press that, it's going to cause, when you do your play the piano, it's going to put the seam in the right direction.
Okay.
Because when you press this one, you started with your cats up. And this one, you're going to do the same thing. All right. And then You can do, we're going to be putting them back into the rows just like your quilt pattern.
Okay.
So this is where you get to check that and make sure you've got them going the right way.
All right, so top row.
I'll put this one down a little bit.
Oh,
And
nope.
whoop, very good. Want
have
those
the
kitties to go the
keys.
same way. So then,
Okay, we got our row.
now we're going to pin it together the exact same way that you did the twos, but now you're going to have those together. So just flip one over.
And then it's just one seam left and I have a row.
Yes, you got one whole row done. So this is great. Feel like it's going together pretty quickly for you?
I do actually. I feel like once I got everything cut, it was, I think that was probably the longest part for me. And the part, I'm going to flip this because you pinned on the seam first earlier, and I thought that was a really helpful guide as kind of like my first anchoring point.
And the other thing is that whenever you put your seams up, you can actually watch them to make sure that they're not folding up under the presser foot. So when you can, you will want to do that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
once you get that one sewn, you're going to have your first row.
And I loved your trick earlier of, okay, you've got it pinned, now open it to see what side, like, is it actually on the right seam? Because I feel like you could get real wonky real fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good, yes, I am doing it correctly. It's a nice check.
Okay.
Okay.
So
you want to
let's
go sew this?
Let's go sew this.
All right. All right. So we've pressed our pieces. We're ready. I'm just going to make sure my kitties and everything, okay, they're going in the right direction if I do my seam.
All right.
And then, okay, so my seam is up. It's facing the other direction, but that's okay, right?
Yeah, we're going to press it so it'll go
Okay.
in the right direction.
Alrighty. All right, push my little threads out of the way. And then I'm going to move my pin down.
See, you're already getting the hang of all of this.
I'm working on it. Okay, lined up with...
Yeah, wait, you can just leave that and just put it right up against your needle, just like you're going. Put your presser foot down and start sewing.
Okay. I'm used to my mom's old Singer. Whenever I used that, like, long time ago, you had to
Right.
manually do the needle with your hands.
Right. All these new fancy machines just kind of do all those things for you now.
Man. Machines these days.
They're awesome. Now, are you paying attention to the purple strip or are you watching your needle?
Purple strip.
All right.
Got my eyes down here.
Okay. Remember what I said. If you wait till you get up, you see that mistake going under the needle, it's too late because it will just zoom under there. And another precaution for newbies, I would say, is I like the way you're keeping your hand flat on that and guiding it under, because if you pull it, you're going to distort the seam. So you don't want to do any pulling on the back end of your fabric. Just let the machine guide it under.
Okay.
So you were doing good.
Yay!
All right.
Okay.
And we need a drum roll.
Ta-da!
Awesome.
I did it in one row.
Awesome.
Okay.
You're 20% of the way done with your top.
Yay! Only 5 more to go.
4 more to go.
Four more to go.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay, well, let's go do it.
All right.
Okay, so when we're pinning these together, a couple of the things that I want to show you is, remember when we talked about directional pressing so that you get your seams going in the right direction? Let's turn these over so we can show what we're talking about. So this is the row 1 and this is the row 2. And so we did make sure whenever we we're at the ironing board and putting them all together, we pressed all of these one way and then all of these the other way. And what that'll do is it'll help them to nest together.
Okay.
Okay?
So, yeah, so you go down the rows, and the first row is all one direction. The second row goes opposite, and then you just keep going down the quilt the same way.
Correct.
Going, alternating.
And
Right
if you
and
make
left.
all of your row number 1, you're going to be making 3 of those. Then just press all of them, all 3 of those rows that start with the kitty.
Yeah.
You'll press those all one direction.
Okay.
And then this one is starts with the 4 patch. We just pressed all of those the other direction.
Gotcha.
Okay, now we're just going to do the same thing you did with your blocks.
Okay.
And we're just going to put them right sides together. We'll pin these together. We want to make sure the kitties are going the same direction, the stripes are going the same direction, and then we say, yay! Okay.
Okay, now you talked to me about nesting. So you mean with these seams, right?
Yeah, see what happens? You've got a seam going one way, and then you've got the seam going the other. When you do that, you can just kind of like rub them a little bit, and they'll just nest together.
Okay.
And then you can put a pin on either side.
Okay.
Let me pin this one, and then you can pin the others. All righty. And that really makes the nice nest that you want. You don't have to worry about this one if you pressed and it didn't quite, if you pressed it the other way, it doesn't have to be nesting with anything.
Okay.
So this one could have gone the other direction if you accidentally didn't do it.
Yeah, if you missed one.
Now,
Okay.
I noticed there's maybe a little bit of a gap here. Let's look and see. It's not very much. Remember we talked about making fudge?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of those places where it looks like the fabric may have raveled more on this side, but when you nest it together and you sew it, you want to put your eye on that and use that as your guide, not where it's a little shy. That'll be in your seam allowance.
Gotcha.
So that's how you're going to make fudge on that one. Okay, so you go ahead and pin these all the way across.
All right, so got it all.
I'm very
nested.
impressed. Oh my goodness, I am so impressed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
So now we've got that pinned together.
Yeah.
We're going to sew it.
Yep.
So, okay.
So I'm going to go do that to all the rest of mine, but we're going to learn how to sew this together.
All right.
All right.
So let's go sewing.
Okay, so I have my 2 rows pinned together. Donna's got me all set up on the machine. So let's sew these bad boys together, huh? Okay. Line it up. And drop our foot. And we're just going. Take the pin out. That's important. Okay. There we go. And there you have it. 2 strips all sewn together. So now I'm going to go and do exactly the same thing and sew the rest of the strips together. And then I can show you my quilt top. So let's go.
Awesome. That is great.
Yeah.
It went together very nicely. All of those stripes are going the right way. I don't see any kitties standing on their head.
Well, and also, Donna, so when we say our patterns go together really quickly, it really did for me. Even as a beginner, I didn't time myself from when I started cutting, but I know that from squaring up blocks to putting the quilt top together, it took me less than 3 hours or about 3 hours.
That is
So,
awesome.
yeah, I just put all the rows out and it just went boom, boom, boom. So
That is great. That is great.
Really is quick.
Well, you know what's next?
Borders.
Yes. Those little things that we put on the sides to call it finished.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
are so pretty.
Yes, they are. And we're going to look at the pattern. So on the pattern, there's a whole section here about borders. For border 1, using fabric number 2, 1.5 times with the fabric strips. And voila, we have the packet that you put together way back in the beginning.
Yeah.
So we'll take those out. And remember how I explained to you that sometimes there are little bitty things that are not repeated over and over in a pattern, but they're important to do. And when it comes to the border, this is important. You want to trim off all of your selvages before you put your strips together.
Oh, okay.
And I want to remind everyone, this is an economy quilt. This is not perfectionistic. As you learn to quilt more and more, there's lots of different tips and tricks that we will show you about your borders. But today we are learning how to sew, how to run that sewing machine, how to make things go together so that you can say, I made a practice quilt.
Yeah.
So we're going to sew these end to end. And if you'll look here, your instructions say sew strips to, you're going to sew them end to end, and then you're going to sew to both sides. So you'll sew one on each side of the quilt, and then you sew it to, you trim it with the quilt, and then you sew your top and your bottom on, trimming it down.
Okay.
So that makes you one long piece that you're sewing on there.
Okay, so I sew first, so I trim these and sew all of them end to end.
Right.
And then start on like a right or left side.
Either one.
Okay. And then I sew that side on, trim it, go to the other side, put that one on, and then I move to the top and repeat. Rinse
Correct.
and repeat.
Right.
Okay.
That is exactly right.
Gotcha, cool.
Okay.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Okay. So you feel pretty straightforward.
think
It's not
so.
nearly as scary as you
No,
thought.
it looks really intimidating because you're like, that's a lot of sewing. But I think it's okay.
Yeah, that's the longest run you'll do. Well,
Yeah.
no, the next one's going to be kind of long too.
Oh, for the second border?
Right. So you want to talk about the second border and then just do all of it at once?
No, let's go ahead. I'm going to do this one first. Do it in bite-sized chunks.
All right. That sounds great. Okay. Just as soon as she gets through sewing this border on, we will go to the next one. Yeah. All right. So have fun.
Thank you.
Well, Hannah.
Ta-da! First
Awesome.
border.
And I love the way the stripes go on that.
I do too. It's framed very nicely, I think.
I think it is too. Okay, we're ready for border 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to get the pattern again so we can refer to reading your pattern. It's kind of nice going all along these steps here with somebody there to read it for you.
Yeah, that's true. I love audiobooks, so you know.
Well, yeah. It's
like an audio
We just need an
pattern.
audio pattern,
Yeah.
right. Okay, but I'm a visual person too. Okay, so we did the border 1, and so that's right here. You've got border number 1 right here. And then we're going to go down here and find for border number 2.
Okay.
So we have those 2 different ones. So border number 2, using 3.5 times with the fabric border strips, you're going to sew together end to end. We're going to put those together. We're going to do the same thing. You need to trim off your selvages. So you don't ever want to sew those selvages together where they're staying with the quilt.
Gotcha.
We only cut one end off when we were doing our piecing, but when you're doing your border, you want to take them all off.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're going to measure across the top of the quilt. So see where it says measure across the top of the quilt? And from that, out of that, those 3 pieces that you've sewn together,
Right.
you're going to make 2 strips using that measurement.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do that. So now we're going to measure across the top of the quilt. All right, and we're going to use a tape measure.
Okay.
You can also use your quilting corners your squares on your table, but that's a lot of counting and not lose my place. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's true.
So it's easier if you just do this, okay? Now we're going to use a tape measure, and be sure to check your tape measure and make sure that you you start measuring right here and not right down here. So this
Gotcha.
is where the 1 inch begins. So we're going to put that right up here, and I'll hand you that in. This is kind of helpful when you've got somebody else to help you measure. You can also fold your quilt in half if you're good with math, and you can fold it in half, measure half of it, and multiply by 2. Okay, let's make sure that we're both, yep, that's good. Okay, so what do you got?
42 3/4.
Awesome. So let's write that down. So we'll write the top is 42 3/4 inch. All right, now let's measure the bottom. Now, do you know why I'm telling you to measure both?
To make sure that they're consistent?
And if they're not, you have to cut a little bit different, because occasionally, you know, you can lose 1/8 of an inch all the way across on every one of these, and by the time you get to the end, it could be a ½ inch.
And
So-
that makes a big difference when you're cutting your borders.
Right, and it won't fit. So, okay, let's do this. And we are going to measure, and again, I'm putting it in the right spot. Okay. And we want to just take that across. Then make sure you got it all nice and flat.
So on this one, I am just about 1/4 inch short.
Let me look. Is it 1/4 or is it 1/8? Yeah, it's almost like
I think it's closer to 42 1/2.
42 1/2. So that's about a ½ inch difference. So you know what that's going to be? 42 1/2. Okay, so this is the bottom. And you know how I knew that was the bottom?
Because my kitties are facing the wrong
That's
direction.
right. Okay. Is this an unusual thing? For our first quilt, it's not unusual. And you know, if you're a perfectionist, you can go back and rip all this out and redo it. Or you can accept the fact that this is your first quilt, it's a practice quilt, and you learned a whole lot. And the more you learn and the more habitual some of these things become to you, the better stitcher you're going to be. So I'm the kind of person, especially if I were to show you my first quilts, that accepts the fact that it's not always just absolutely precise when you first start, but it will get better and better. So we measured it both. We're going to have a little bit of a wonky quilt, but remember in the beginning you told me you didn't mind having a wonky quilt? And
And I also think with wonkiness, I think the fabric itself probably covers it up a little bit with the patterns.
well, nobody's going to know that you are 1/4 of an inch off on
Yeah.
one or the other unless they bring their tape measure over and start doing an inspection on it.
I don't think I'd be friends with them.
That's a good point. A little too picky for you, huh? Okay, so how many strips are we going to sew together? Let's get back to our pattern.
Okay, so we'll use the fabric 3 1/2 by width of fabric border strip. So I can come look over here on my cutting instructions, 5. I cut
Okay.
5 3 1/2 by
Okay.
width the fabric for
And
border
these
strip.
are your strips here? All right. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you how to do this, and then I'm going to let you go over there and do it. Since you're pretty comfortable at the sewing machine now, aren't you?
I'm getting there. There's
Okay.
definitely times where I feel like cursing it a little bit, but it's done me good most of the time.
Okay.
I know it's all user error.
Okay, so it's going to tell you to measure these measurements. So you're going to cut 2 different ones, because one of them is about 1/4 of an inch smaller. It's really just a little less than 1/4 inch. So,
Okay.
but you can go ahead and do it this. And then you're going to use those measurements. You're going to sew these together. You're going to cut those 2 pieces.
Out of my really long.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have your corner blocks, and these are going to be on each end of that top piece that you just made. And remember when you did this first one, you sewed them on the sides and then the top? You're going to do the same thing again. You will end up sewing your sides first and then your top.
Okay.
Okay, but we're making the top first, so it's already done.
Okay. And so you make it and then you just put it to the side, let it hang out
Right.
for a little bit.
And we even say that down here. So 1 corner block to each end of those strips and set the strips aside.
Okay.
And then you're going to use the remainder of the strip and do the same thing you did before. Sew them down the sides, and then you're going to take the borders for the top and the bottom and sew them to the top and bottom.
Okay.
And so here's a question for you. Why do you suppose that I told you to cut it this size and then add these blocks? If you do that, then it would basically be something like this. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to have your border strip in here.
And we cut these the same size. These are the same size as the border, so it will match up when we put our side ones on.
Oh, you're so sharp. Okay, great.
This comes from working here.
Okay, so she's going to cut her strips. Mm-hmm. She's going to sew a border block on each end of that strip, set it aside, and then she's going to sew the sides, and then she's going to put the top on.
And the bottom. Okay.
And you're going to keep this right handy dandy
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can refer to that. Okay.
Definitely.
Go get it, girl.
Okay, let's do it. Donna,
Yes.
it's finally done.
Let me see. Oh, I'm so proud of you. It's a quilt.
Yeah.
Look at that. How do you feel about it?
I feel pretty good about it.
Awesome. Well, let's put it up on the table and talk about your experience.
All right.
Okay, so you finished your first quilt. It looks great. I'm so proud of
I
you.
guess I should turn it around so that they can see the kitties from the top side. I saw it a lot when I was making it.
And you were constantly checking to see if they were
Yeah.
going the right way.
I guess, most certainly was.
Well, how do you feel now?
I feel good. I think this was a really good first quilt. Mm-hmm. So if there is anyone else out there who you've never made a quilt, but you're interested in getting into it, I do think this one was a really good one because it still looks very intricate, I think. Mm-hmm. But it was so basic kind of skills. Like you figured out how to do one block and then you could do the rest of the quilt. Nothing it was very beginner friendly.
That's a good way to put it. I always like to say, too, that it makes it look like you did something.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something just good for quilters of any level of experience because a lot of people don't have time to do quilts
That is so
that are
true.
very intricate of tiny little pieces and all this. Even if you might like it, you know, if you're doing charity quilts or quilts for family and friends, you don't necessarily have time to do that.
I was pushing 40 when I started quilting, and I had a full-time executive position with a big corporation, and I remember coming home from work and squeezing in my quilting time and my fabric time. So I know what it's like. And at that time, I would have loved to have something that was easy to make. Do you feel like you overcame some of your fears?
Yeah, I think so. I gotta say borders were actually probably the scariest things for me.
Yeah?
For some reason, the other parts, you know, it's like a puzzle. I laid out all of when I was making my rows, I put out all my rows on the floor so I could see everything at once. And that was really helpful because that's how I went along and sewed my rows, because occasionally I would accidentally sew them on the wrong side. So it didn't square didn't work down here anymore, but that one, it could work up there, and that hasn't been sewn yet, so I'll just move it up there, and then I take these pieces and swap them. So
that was very clever. So it really taps into your creativity.
yeah.
Okay. Any advice for the newbies?
Go slow, have fun, don't stress, and just pick fabric you like, because then it makes it all even more fun, because you're getting to look at something pretty that you really appreciate.
Well, that's great. So are you ready for your next step?
Yeah. Oh, and what a nice segue into stepping stones.
We didn't even practice
No,
that.
I didn't. It's off the cuff.
So she's going to step it up to stepping stones with the next one.
Yeah.
And that will be starting shortly. So make sure that you have subscribed and hit the little bell so that you can find out about that next one. What else do you want to share with us?
Well, if you want to quilt along with me, we still have this kit available. So you can go to fabriccafe.com and look up Kitty Muse. It also is linked below in the description.
Awesome. So until next time,
Yeah.
happy quilting.